So now I'd like to move to our first session of the day. Something that I consider to be a historic conversation that we're going to have here. I'm thrilled to welcome representatives from the National Newspaper Publishers Association, the National Association of Hispanic Publications, and the Association of Alternative Newsmedia to the stage. Together, they built a collaboration that includes more than 450 local media organizations, many of whom are print publications. And their first order of business was an economic collaboration. So we're going to hear a lot more about that. So I'd like to hand it over to Larry Lee, who is the publisher of the Sacramento Observer, who will lead this conversation. Larry.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Can you hear me and see me okay? Hopefully that is yes. Well, welcome. Thank you all for coming this morning in Sacramento, California. Good afternoon for those of you on the East Coast. My name is Larry Lee. I'm president and publisher of the Sacramento Observer, and I will be your moderator this morning for this panel discussing collaboration, the key to sustainability in local media. This is really, as Stephanie said, this is a historic gathering of many organizations advocating on behalf of many legacy publications around the country. So we'd love to hear how a group of press associations are expanding the conversation around the future of local media. So what I will do is ask our panelists to introduce themselves. I'll start first, and I'm hoping, because I can't see who all's in the room, but let's start with Dr. Ben Chavis. Dr. Chavis, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Larry, and thank you very much. On behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, just want to note, Larry, that this year, 2021, marks the 194th year of the Black Press of America. Since Freedom's Journal was first published in 1827 in New York City, the Black press has not missed a week, has not missed a year, publishing, advocating for freedom, justice, and equality, and representing not only the news interests of African Americans, people of African descent, but all communities of color who cry out for freedom, justice, and equality. I bring you greetings from our board of directors, chaired by Karen Carter Richards, the distinguished publisher of the Houston Forward Times. And Larry, we are very pleased to have the Sacramento Observer as one of our vibrant members of the NNPA. So I don't know where you want me to go into my remarks now. I just want me to introduce myself.
No, we'll just do a brief introduction. So Dr. Ben, as always, you did exactly as you always do with perfection. I will pass it on to Fanny Miller.
Good morning, Larry. Thank you. Thank you for having us. My name is Fanny Miller. I am in San Diego, California, from shiny, beautiful San Diego. I've been publishing in Latino for the last 33 years in San Diego. I am currently the National Association of Hispanic Publications president. I came to the organization being a really young 23-year-old publisher. That's how I came to another organization and had many mentors. Right now, the organization is, we serve about 41 markets in 39 states, and we have also Puerto Rico and DC. We have a combined reach of about print and digital of 42.2 million. And the majority of members are female owned, and also about 80% of our publications are in Spanish. We do have some bilingual ones. And we also have a high number of female editors. And I just like to throw the women numbers out there, but that's about us, and I'm really happy to be here and for this conversation.
Fanny, we're glad to have you and glad to see the women representing properly as they should. Next, but not least, John Heaston. John, go ahead and introduce yourself and your organization, if you could, please.
Sure, my name is John Heaston. I started an alternative publication in Omaha, Nebraska in '94 and purchased an existing Hispanic publication in 2004. I'm currently the board president at the Association of Alternative Newsmedia. Just about 100 independent alternative, mostly local media in a lot of our major metros. And it is a big honor to be here with NNPA, NAHP, and the opportunity to work with them and to build bridges also with Lions. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Okay, so as moderator, my job is to kind of keep us moving quickly. And so I will do that. Oh, okay. Well, let me actually, Alvaro, let's have everyone introduce themselves then. Okay, so next, Alvaro, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Larry. Yeah, my name is Alvaro Gurudian. I'm the Vice President of Operations for La Noticia, which is a Spanish language media company in North Carolina. You said in the introduction, we started as print, but now we're strongly stepping into digital, as we're talking today. I'm also the Vice President of the National Association of Hispanic Publications, and I'm the Treasurer for Line as well.
Wonderful. Okay, then last but not least, my esteemed fellow publisher, Ms. Cheryl Smith. Cheryl, please introduce yourself to everyone.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon. Hello to everyone. It's an honor to be here, especially anytime I could be with Dr. Ben Chavis because he's a legend. And I am the publisher of Texas Metro News, Garland Journal, and iMessenger. And we're located in Dallas, Texas. And I'm a longtime lover of the Black press and a lover of collaborations as well. And I am also the secretary of the National Association of Black Journalists.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so keeping to our script, Dr. Chavis, why don't you kick us off here? This is a historic collaboration. Tell us a little bit how we got here and what it is this collaboration is trying to accomplish.
Thank you so much. Since 2014, I've been the president and CEO of the NNPA. And one of the things that we did, Larry, about 6 years ago, was to forge a collaborative alliance, a strategic alliance between the NNPA, the National Newspaper Publishers Association, and the NAHP, the National Association of Hispanic Publications. We came together in Washington, D.C. The concern was we were not getting the federal advertising dollars as we should have been getting, and I remember newspapers. And there was a tendency of these big ad agencies to play Blacks off against Hispanics, Hispanics off against Blacks. And we were both neither one of our constituencies were getting what we should deserve in terms of advertising. And so I was so pleased that this summit, to me, collaboration is not just a word. Collaboration is a interfacing, it is a bonding, it is a solidarity, it is a working together. And when the NAHP and the NNPA decided to work together, it caused a little controversy among some of our members. Some of our members said, man, why are you working with the Latinos? You're going to dilute us. And I'm sure some of the Hispanic publications said, well, why you want to work with these African Americans? Let's get all we can for our Latino brothers and sisters. So what happened, what we found out, Larry, was the extent to which we started working together, we got more attention, not only from the federal government agencies, but from corporate America itself. And keep in mind, this is way before what we're going through now with the resurgence of white supremacy, the whole notion of systemic racism, and after what happened to George Floyd last year. Now all of corporate America is talking about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So our collaboration really preceded that. And it's a good thing because what we found out was, as a result of the collaboration, one, we got more advertising dollars. Two, we learned that there are mutual interests in our major markets that we should be working together. So we not only increased local advertising, we also got regional advertising as well as national advertising as a result of the collaboration. And then we started attending each other's national conventions. I presented at the NAHP convention, they presented at the NNPA convention. And this collaboration, I think, has been mutually beneficial. That's the point I want to make, Larry, initially. And we're very pleased with the solidarity between the NNPA and the NAHP. It's a great role model. And I want to thank the Collaborative Journalism Summit for having this particular workshop, and the Center for Collaborative Media for being one of the key sponsors of today. What we have to learn is that if we work together, we can win together.
Well said, Dr. Ben. I think what I'd like to hear from Fanny, really telling us from your perspective about the Hispanic Association participating in this collaboration, and what did you want to see from this?
No, Larry, when you are asked if you want to work and you want to collaborate with Dr. Chavis, there's no way you're going to say no. I mean, it has been a great opportunity, has been a great partnership, and I still believe that they give the best parties and the best conventions, and we miss them. But I think this is really important, for us to come. It has been important, and there's a lot of more work that we need to do. I mean, I think we just started, but we're all different. We have 4 different organizations, but when it comes to Hispanic and African American, we're very different, but we have the same needs, the same needs for our publishers, for our members, the same, a lot of the same needs for our communities. So this collaboration is very important. And I think we're just seeing the beginning of it.
Gotcha. So give us an example of the impact the Hispanic press has had, for example, during COVID, and what more could you be doing with more funding?
So during COVID, I think, when everybody went home and everything shut down, the Hispanic press and, most of the press, but I'm going to speak on behalf of the Hispanic press, we didn't go home. We actually became essential workers. We needed, the news were changing so fast, I mean, by the hour. And I think it gave us, many of our publishers, seeing the importance of being digital, because you could only print the newspaper once a week, but you digital, when everything was changing, the numbers at the minute, at the hour, there was a press release every hour in some of our communities. I think that's when we realized, we have always known that we're important, but we realized the importance of going online and having that, presence, by the minute, if you could say that. The way that we were affected, I mean, we were affected like any other business, because, our sponsors stopped advertising. So, that shut down in many ways, but we needed to still continue, letting the communities, our small communities, know what was going on with COVID and in all the services and all the resources that were coming into place. So, some of the programs that you're going to see in the collaborations that you're going to speak ahead, it's some of the things that we see now that are more important, and we need to do more. Everything that has to do with digital, the resources for our members. And also one of the things that I noticed and I have seen in during COVID is how many it has brought us together even closer. I think some of the publishers has brought us together, the organizations, the foundations, some of the corporations. We have worked with a lot with the support local media, and that has really helped a lot of our publishers in many markets.
Gotcha. Great. So John, if I can come to you next. On the surface, people may not see a connection between independent publications and the Black and Hispanic press. Tell us from your perspective, how did they come together? How do you see this collaboration working?
Sure. For me, it really started locally. So having started the Alternative and also being a publisher of the Hispanic publication, I learned about these relationships in the community, and shortly after that was invited onto the board of the Mildred D. Brown Memorial Study Center. Mildred Brown is the founder of the Omaha Star, which is the oldest Black female founded and run newspaper in the US, one of the 22 publishers that helped organize NNPA when it was initially formed. And so had a real appreciation at kind of the ground level of the importance of diverse voices in the local media ecosystem. And that summer, and having attended the NAHP conventions, getting a chance to meet Dr. Chavis and some of the leadership, some of the board leadership from NNPA to spend some time to just kind of watch in awe with the Strategic Alliance and what it was doing. But what really kind of got me maybe more involved was in the summer of 19 when I became president at the Association of Alternative Newsmedia. And as a board member at the Mildred D. Brown Memorial Study Center, I got a grant for the Omaha Star. And that really opened my eyes to this billion-dollar commitment to save local media, with this thread of underrepresented voices being important, but knew from my relationships in time that there was a big disconnect in how what I knew about the Hispanic and Black press and the alternative press for that matter, and how funders and other organizations were trying to understand what the future of local media would look like. And so just started kind of banging on some doors and help drive along, in pretty deep consultation with the leadership at the Hispanic and Black press, a conversation around trying to shift some of that attention and some of those attitudes. And so it's been a huge privilege of mine to be able to help and elevate 130 plus years of publishers, local publishers working together. And I think, that's part of my role and the role every alternative news media plays in their market.
Gotcha. So let's get into a little bit about the nuts and bolts, or into the weeds a little bit. So you guys have been meeting with regularity. You are working very hard at this. This is not just, let's talk every 3 times a year or something like that. Tell us in the mechanics of what's going on day to day, week to week on this collaboration, John.
Yeah, so we had a meeting at the offices of the NNPA the first week of January in 2020. And we hosted, NNPA hosted, it's in the Thurgood Marshall Center too, which is just such a powerful building and such a powerful space. We hosted Google News Initiative. They brought a great team. LMA, Local Media Association, was there. And we had representatives and publishers from all 3 associations to talk about all the commonalities that we had, how we fill out the local media ecosystem. We're the scrappiest local media operators. We have some of the leanest overheads. We stand up for the voices that don't get represented. And that really kicked off kind of this ongoing work for, and in this case, kind of building on what the strategic alliance between NNPA and NAHP had already built. And so there was a small working group that met every Tuesday, kind of advancing our conversation with Google News Initiative and trying to open things up. We were going to meet next in person at the Hispanic Legislative Summit that NAHP hosts in DC, which I think is a week after Black Press Week, when NNPA meets with the Congressional Black Caucus and others. And of course, we know how that all went. And it was really about 3 weeks into, or just a week or 2 into the pandemic, when it just was, the reports were kind of rolling in, and your head just started getting around how big this was and how damaging this could be. And along with NAHP and NNPA, convened some meetings at that time with a group of local funders. LMA, Lion really stepped up to some leadership in those conversations. And over a series of 4 weeks, talking about how can we help our local media, and a diverse local media, and the ones that really need it. And I think you see the fingerprints of that in some of the emergency relief funds that Facebook and Google announced that got, I think, a combined 80 million plus out to local publishers. And so, from there, it was kind of expanding opportunities and just making sure we were reaching out and knocking on doors and letting folks know that we were here and we were ready to engage. And I think, while the strategic alliance has existed for a long time, and we're kind of a new addition to this, as well as Lion is, the awareness that started around Floyd really kind of vaulted this a bit higher, I think, into the consciousness of the thought leadership and the funding behind local media. So that's creating even some more opportunities, but I think we all think we're just scratching the surface, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. And now is the time that voices that haven't been represented or have been underrepresented and who have so much to show and teach us really need to be elevated. And so looking forward to the work ahead, because there's a lot of work, but as Dr. Chavis says, if we do it together, we win together.
That's right. So Dr. Chavis, you know, there have been some real specific efforts to really build the capacity of many of our publications. And there's one in particular I know that you want to make sure and highlight and discuss, and that'll kind of slide us into bringing Cheryl and Alvaro into the conversation as well too. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the work that's been going on?
Thank you, Larry, and of course, also involves your paper too, the Sacramento Observer. Look, after that meeting that John talked about in January of 2020, we really began to engage Google, Facebook, other groups, but particularly Google, came up with a Google News Initiative. And as you know, during this pandemic, over the last 12 months, also the pendulum was swinging faster toward digital. And so all of a sudden, on the one hand, our publishers had to contend with this pandemic, but on the other hand, catching up with the speed of the technology transformation of media, of disseminated media, how, so quote unquote digital, you know, from print first to digital first, and not seeing digital supplanting print, but complementing print, and not seeing print taking place of digital, but complementing digital. All that, the good news is, Larry, that early on, a proposal came of opportunity through digital, working with our collaborative associations to call the Google News Initiative, GNI. And it was for digital transformation. And I'm so pleased that so many of the member publishers of the NNPA, as well as NAHP, and with John's group, worked together. And it's been amazing. I'm hearing from the publishers already as we're about to conclude the GNI, the first phase, that is to involve many publishers, many opportunities. Not only for the publishers, Larry, who are in the Google News Initiative, but for others that are learning from this. Our websites have been transformed, getting young people, Generation Z and millennials involved in this digital transformation has been very, very helpful. And I would say that the Google News Initiative proudly stands as one of the foremost examples of the benefits of collaboration, of the benefits of working together. And I also say, just to be fair, that collaborations between some of our people of color-owned businesses and some of the major media companies are also taking place. So collaborations across the board. One thing I want to say in closing my remarks, digital is something that we all have to take more seriously from a business side as well as from the professional side. Two, the demographics are changing. When the 2020 census is going to be reported out in a few months, you're going to find out that the browning of America is going much more rapid than even the demographers had projected. The Children's Defense Fund just reported last week, Larry, that the majority now of children under 18 in the United States today in 2021 are majority children of color. That's going to change the school system. It's going to change the workplace. So again, this whole effort of diversity, equity, and inclusion is not something for rhetoric, it's something for implementation. And we have some good examples now in the Black press, with the Latino press and others, particularly with help from organizations like Google. I'm so proud of the Google News Initiative.
Gotcha. Thanks for sharing, Dr. Ben. So in that beautiful photo of the participants from the Ad Transformation Lab, I saw my good friend Cheryl Smith's face right up there, and Alvaro right up in there, trying to get as much learnings as possible. So Cheryl, we'll jump to you real quick, and I want to be very mindful of time. We're at 9. For my time, it's 9:30. We're about 30 minutes into our panel, so we got about 30 minutes left. So we'll try and move quickly because I know we want to hear from some of the some Q&As and some of the viewers. So Cheryl, tell us real briefly about your participation in the Gni Ad Transformation Lab.
Let me tell you, I was so excited to participate that we actually went out and hired someone to help us manage it because it was like speaking a foreign language, a lot of the lingo. But what we didn't want to do, because one thing is Dr. Chavis mentioned about the pandemic, it also it shined a light on the deserts, the issues that both of our Hispanic and Black publications are having, and our communities are having. So there are a lot of issues that we were being faced with, and we were determined not to be afraid because I'm old enough to have gone through hot metal and the large compographic machines that we use.
You're showing at your age there, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Mine too.
And this is so important to know because some people fought it just like they were fighting digital, and we weren't going to fight digital. And the initiative helped us because we really needed help in growing and learning what was important for our audiences and how to build them. And the GNI project put together a very aggressive agenda for us and helping. I was already working because I'm in a collaboration with the Dallas Morning News, and we call on them for help, but they also call on us for help because they were missing. Major publications are realizing that they are missing our communities. And this pandemic showed us that there's strength in numbers. And I love what Dr. Ben said about us working together and how we can win together. The GNI project is I'm getting to hear from other people in other communities and what their publications are doing and the struggles that they are having, and we're solving them together. And I'm getting calls from across the country and emails from around the world from people saying, your website looks better. It looks fresher, and all of these wonderful things are happening. So I feel like I'm really smart. They make me feel really smart because I got to participate in such, and I took advantage of this opportunity, which I would encourage anyone to not run from them. But we also just have to understand that when the pandemic hit, it made our printed project equally more important because everyone could not access the digital.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're becoming true multimedia companies.
Yes.
And this is part of the transformation for us. Alvaro, I know you're going through some changes as well too with your organization. Why don't you share with folks about how this collaboration has assisted you with your capacity building?
Yes, thank you, Larry. Much like Cheryl, we were really starting from the beginning, which is both good and bad. We had to get some more hands on deck to do more of the work. We're very thankful for the opportunity that we received from the collaborative, as well as from Google, the GNI team, and TANUP. They've been very helpful in providing best practices and also providing them in a way that sort of we can act on them quickly. They kind of diagnosed where we were and gave us a plan of where we should go. So we are still in the middle of the program, so we're still executing those. But many of the things we have acted on, much like what Cheryl was saying, we do get positive feedback, and that feels good. That fuels us to keep going. But also because it is an ad lab, it also means we've already been receiving more ad dollars from better traffic, and also indirectly, which is also part of the lab, is as you grow in visibility, your current and potential clients find you faster. So they reach out to you, say, hey, I've seen you. I have some trust in you. You look the part. I want to be seen with you. So that's also a big change, as we, like Dr. Chavis was saying, is a complement of our digital that goes with the history that we have in our publication. And it really helps us to do the mission that we are set out to do, which is to help our community. We can't help our community if we don't have the economic means. So it really is that virtuous cycle, which we are very thankful that we are now sort of stepping into. And also to our, I want to give a lot of thanks to a lot of our fellow publishers in the cohort, trading information. What are you doing? What am I doing? Is it working for you? Why? How did you do it? That ability to come together and just be and help each other has been extremely valuable and something we had not come across before, but I am certainly thankful that we got the opportunity and hope we can continue in the future.
Great. Well, as a publisher, I do know, like you said, there's nothing better than someone calling, telling you that they want to advertise with you as opposed to you going to find them. So we need all the help that we can get transforming our media outlets. Fanny, I want to come to you from right before we go to Q&A. Tell us a little bit about what you see as the future, the next steps for this collaboration.
You know, Larry, there's so much to do and so many opportunities, and I think doing more of what have been doing, you know, coming together to continue develop pathways to, you know, more digital transformation, have more publications, more members benefit from the services. So, you know, what we have been doing in a small way, you know, we need to expand on that. You know, what the digital transformation for our publishers is key. You know, the GNI is, I think, is one program of the many programs that that we should be seeking, and then we should be you know, partnering with, and to bring resources to the members. You know, when it comes to the Hispanic publications, they're not everybody's at the same level. You know, we have publications that are very, you know, high up in the digital world, and then some that are just, you know, barely starting and don't have a presence. And so it's very important for us to continue the kind of programs like we have been doing with GNI, but I think we need to do more. And actually, my goal is to give more resources, such as the one that we did with GNI and the lab, to more members, because, you know, we had a lot of members that applied, but it was, you know, a small number actually that is going through the program.
Gotcha. Okay, so I want to get to the Q&A, but I want to close by asking one question very specifically to John. So John, as in my travels in this, what I have heard from some who are not within the African American or ethnic media space, that as they have been trying to get funding for efforts like this that are specifically directed toward communities of color, their eyes have been opened about the lack of funding directly sent to ethnic publications, the inequalities, the disparities. Can you tell us from your perspective, have you encountered that? Is that something, because Fanny brought it up, you know, we need more resources to kind of do the work, and some of the mainstream publications and newsrooms might get a certain amount of funding, and we may get a fraction of that funding. Has that been something that you've encountered coming from outside of the ethnic media?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, the history is pretty clear on it. And even in the last 10 years of the reinvent local media, you know, push, I think the thing that I learned at the local level very early on is that even though I'm an alternative and I spend a lot of time in these communities and try and report for these communities, that these communities have their own voices. They have all the skill, all the talent, and that if we're reinventing the revenue model around media, we need to rethink the journalism model as well, so that we aren't the gatekeepers, we're the referees, moderators, and we elevate these voices, right? And so I think, you know, the thing that I would say to that is, I think that there's a certain level of how you manage expectations and set things up. And frankly, you know, I'm learning a lot in this whole process so that you get those funds. But what I do know without a doubt is that if I'm going to support these voices, these communities, and the media that represent them, then that investment needs to be directly with them. And, you know, AAN, Lion, we can play supporting roles. Like I said, there's 130 years between these two associations of publishers paying for their memberships, coming together frequently, collaborating, sharing. I think every publisher here would say, I learn more at those conventions than I learn all year, right? And I get a share. And so it might not fit the standard program model, but I'm hoping program models are also opening up to this and adapting. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt, you know, I mean, that it's crazy that it's taken this long, you know, in my opinion, and I think people mean well. So it's also on us to make sure that we're there and making that opportunity as good as possible as it can be. But yeah, no, that's the history of it, flat out. And, you know, despite all of that, these associations and their media, you know, they're still serving their communities. They're surviving COVID, US Census, election coverage, you know, you name it. And, you know, there's no big corporate lending facility somewhere to float that boat, or, you know, some billionaire throwing money around to try and make it happen. They make it happen every day, you know, as family-owned independent businesses.
Gotcha. Well, great. Okay, so we've got a few questions in the chat area or in the Q&A area, and we will try and run through these quickly. So I'm just going to read them. This is from Josie Gonzalez. To Dr. Chavis's point, how is the challenge of the digital divide and the browning of America being addressed in the digitization of the press?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. I think that there's parallel. In other words, the browning of America, the change in demographics, at the same time, the changing in technology. Because even in the digital space, there are changes within the digital space itself. There are changes in, say, direct digital ad buying and programmatic digital ad buying, and the capacity building that all of our member newspapers in all of our communities need to upgrade and access. So the more collaboration that we've had, the better that we've been able to respond both to the challenges, but also the opportunities. I think there are probably more opportunities today as the nation comes out of COVID than ever before for our member newspapers. I can also say without fear of contradiction that today in 2021, the value of local media cannot be overstated. Local media is becoming the new media, if I could say that. Not that local media in the past was not a priority, but it certainly wasn't highlighted. We're now going from local media to global media, and global media comes back to local media. And so it gives our member newspapers, to the person who asked the question, an advantage. If we see advance, some of this is how do we see ourselves in the marketplace? How do we see ourselves in the news media industry? Because it is an industry. And one of the things I think that the collaboration helps us to see is our business interests. A lot of times people think, well, you know, these minorities, they're just looking for charity. There's nothing wrong with charity, but empowerment is better than charity. Help us to help ourselves do better. Help us to increase our revenue streams, and not to keep us at the fringe of society, but bring our member publication to center of what it means to be a global citizen, what it means to be an American, and across lines of language, across lines of culture. One of the things I think, to close on this point, Larry, that what also gives us an advantage, we're the trusted voices of our communities. And that trust, so we're not just selling metrics, we're selling influence. You know, our sphere of influence in our community, we're the trusted voice. When it came time, where all the people had hesitation to take the vaccine, and we were able to help some of these pharmaceutical companies and some of the federal government itself, the CDC in particular, get over hesitation of the vaccine, hesitation of understanding COVID, because they needed to turn to a trusted voice. And we were there as the trusted voice. That's a great example. So I'm optimistic. I'm more optimistic about the Black press, the Latinx press, the Pacific Island and Asian press, Native American press, as well as progressive white press. We all need to work together. And again, as I said in the beginning, we work together, we win together, we transform together, and we make room for that next generation of freedom fighting journalists to come up.
Wonderful. That's all right, Dr. Ben, that's what you do. Josie also has another question. How is this collaboration engaging with local non-governmental agencies, whether in education, academia, press, local nonprofit news? I'll throw that to the group if anyone wants to answer that.
We are actually collaborating with several institutions in the Dallas area, including our colleges and nonprofits, our libraries. It's important that we realize COVID helped us to realize what was really important and what was important, what was missing, where the disparities were. So people are more inclined for collaborations now. Now is a better time. It's not just about feeling good. It's about knowing you can't do it all, and where there's unity, there's strength. And that was something that we did with the journalists. Actually, when we had Unity Journalists of Color, we came together, and I'm glad to see that we're doing it again. So we've been very successful, and we're getting ready to launch a project in Dallas.
Great. I love this question here. This is for Alvaro. It's from anonymous attendee. So you got a fan, someone cyber stalking you, Alvaro, because they know all about you. They said you've succeeded in being selected to participate in the Gni Lab, host a Google Journalism Fellow, and a Report for America journalist. You've received grants from Facebook, the Democracy Fund, local foundations, and others. Are you unique, or are you ahead of the pack, or are you behind? I'm going to throw that last part in. Or are you behind?
I qualify it like this: everything's relative. So I don't feel ever ahead of the pack on anything. We are still a very small place. But like, I guess I'll put it this way: the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So there's a lot of people that we've been learning from. But and I'll tip my hat to John Heaston, who did it. It started even before we did. He was just preaching, hey, we have to start reaching out to nonprofits, a lot of these funders, and grow that third pillar of fundraising. We were all about just, hey, we're a private enterprise. That's for nonprofits. We're a for-profit. We have nothing to do with that. We just committed to that mindset earlier. And I really mean committed. Like we reached out, we investigated as much as we could. And one tip I will say is reach out to people that either the funders or the people that have won previous received previous grants. You'd be surprised how open they are to just, yeah, what I did, how I did it, and where it's presented. And the second tip I'll say is become active. Is sign up to as many of these newsletters from all these organizations have newsletters. Sign up, read it. I mean, not just receive it and browse it, really read it, follow up. They have great tips about what grants are opening, who is running them, who received them. If you participate, the more they know you, the more you are likely to actually then win, because you know what they're looking for and where you fit in.
Gotcha. Someone put in there, click and participate. I like that, Cheryl. That's a good term. Tell us, Cheryl, you also have been the beneficiary of some of this work. All right, well, how do you feel where you are compared to the ecosystem? Oh, you're on mute. I may have.
That's a good question, because we're participating, we're actively participating, and we're not letting folks define us, because people will try to marginalize our institutions, if you will. I remember going to presenting, and they said, "Oh, this is wonderful for the Black press, but can you do this for the Hispanic press?" You know, and And when those of us who are in the majority now, the Black and the brown, when we realize just how much influence we have, and even bringing, like Dr. Ben mentioned, our Asian, there is a weekly publication in Dallas that is Korean. It is weekly, 162 pages.
Oh my.
Yes, just think about that. And so we talk. They actually bought the radio station I used to work for that I can't listen to now because of language barriers. But when you think about what's going on, if you are constantly fighting with one another, I realize that Black and brown, we're more important now for our communities because after dealing with the last administration, as opposed to what we're getting from the Biden administration today in terms of the respect, folks looked at the media as like we were like used car salesmen, and they had no respect for us. But we were able to bring information to them about COVID that they were not getting anywhere else. We were shining a light on, you're saying that Black and browns are impacted more by COVID, but then the vaccines, the majority of folks getting it are not Black and brown. So we've elevated, and unity has helped us, and we must continue with that same type of realizing that we're not fighting each other. When we work together, the community, our audiences benefit. And that's what we want. That's why we're here, to educate, inform. We'll do a little entertaining from time to time, but empowering and uplifting. That's what we are here for, this Black Press Soldiers Without Swords, because we're fighting a number of battles on a number of fronts, and we can't be silent, and we can't keep saying that let's get a little piece of the pie and take it from someone else. I guarantee you, if someone is advertising with me, they're not giving me all their money. So I'm even asking them about others. Are you advertising in other? They're not giving me all of their money. So they need to spread it around and we can all benefit together.
Absolutely. What you say, when I think of collaboration, often you reminded me of the African proverb: you want to go fast, go alone, but you want to go far, go together. And I think that's what collaborations like this mean. I'll throw this to John or Fanny, either one of you. One of the questions is, what's the biggest challenge to collaborations like this? And how can news organizations address what's being called this digital divide? I think Dr. Chavis, and we've got examples of the Gni Ad Transformation Lab, but what is the biggest challenge for so many different moving parts and pieces?
The challenge, I think we have been able to work and bring, some solid, partnerships to the collaboration. Of course, there's challenges, and I think the challenge is where our members are more than the challenge between the three organizations, but that every member, and at least with the Hispanic membership, they're in a very, very different levels. Getting them to believe that digital is first instead of print being first. That's a challenge because in print, that's where we pretty much have made all our our business. It's out of the print publication, so that's a challenge within itself. I don't know, John, what you see as a challenge with the three organizations, but I would say it's mostly within our members, at least in my view.
Well, yeah, I mean, to echo that point, we've got a great program. We're seeing incredible results. It's serving close to 30 publishers. So that's 500 plus publishers that are also, looking to do this and that deserve the same investment. And I think that for a lot of these, there's a real legacy here that's so important to these communities and so important to our community as a whole. And so, like anything, by meeting weekly, by attending each other's events, you just start building those relationships and so it's worked. right? You just got to put in the time, and you've got to really listen. It's doing that locally that really gave me the appreciation for why these associations were so important. So the investment at the association level then, has been, the rewards and the gifts are all mine. And so, I expect to see more. It's always, I think that we're talking about the Native American press, Asian American, Pacific Islander press. I mean, there's more to this constellation, right? And so NAHP and NNPA, the Hispanic and Black press, are very, structured and organized. They've had decades of working together. We don't have quite that scale in some of the other ones. And so I think that's going to be a little bit more time to make sure that we're reaching out, helping to organize there, building those relationships there, getting those viewpoints into the conversation.
Okay, we are about 4 minutes. We've got about 4 minutes left. I got a couple more questions, so I'll try and push this quickly. One person asked, do you have any recommendations for how to help encourage local news startups within communities of color, particularly where there's a lack of publishers now in those communities?
So I could answer that, or I could give you a little bit of my personal experience. I started at Latino at the age of 21, in 1988, and with pretty much nothing. I mean, no experience, no resources, nothing. And we saw the need. There were 6 of us. A little bit after print and news outlets. It's a hard business. But it's a very rewarding business. So I would recommend, if you really want to do this, I think you need to be part of that community. You need to engage with the community. You need to live in the community. One of the things that I said, in San Diego, I have had probably over 10 publications come and go throughout the years. And I always said, I always go back to basics. Why did I start the publication? It's a community-oriented publication. So if you see a need, I would recommend, first getting involved with organizations, getting mentorship that could help you. If you don't know the industry, but if you really want to get into the business of it.
Gotcha. And to John's point, Lion is a fantastic organization to particularly help digital first startups in this space. Okay, 2 minutes left. How can journalism organizations collaborate with others that usually don't cover specific communities, like communities of color, and help their mindset change for the better?
Real quickly, Dallas Morning News contacted me because they were having really serious issues. And Mike Wilson, I have to say to his credit, he said, he knew the Black community was pissed with the Dallas Morning News. He just flat out, he knew it. And so he reached out, and as you just heard, and as John and others have talked about, you have to know the communities, and Fanny mentioned, get involved, get into it. And one of the best ways they could do that was by partnering with someone who was entrenched in the community. And so we had very candid conversations, but you have to go into it. And there is actually a guide that we just released that talks about the collaboration. You have to go into it and leave your feelings somewhere else, because people have to be honest, and you have to be able to take the honesty and go and help to build. And that's what's really important. Our community has been marginalized. People want to lump the Latino community into one. When I know here in my office, I have someone from Spain, Puerto Rico, and Mexico. So they're not all the same. And the only Spanish word I know is no. No, it really, but when they ask for a raise, but you have to have people who know it, so it doesn't seem like you're pandering, and that you are really interested in building and growing together. And that's what's helping us with the Dallas Morning News, because I am very candid. I bring all my Blackness to the table.